you go.
This year has been extremely challenging for me. I am broken. And I am healing.
I'm here at the memorial wall. I wanted to do something to remember my mum.
For some reason, I'm having anxiety. Obviously, it's normal with everything that's going on right now.
I think I'm gonna take a break for a while.
You can get through it, and if you can get through it, there's a greater reward on the other side.
Just like anybody else, I'm just trying to do my little part to try and save my community.
Ta-da!
I'm just really excited we're back open.
And I am smiling under my mask.
Incredible scenes on the day the fans came back.
Welcome back to the theater.
You guys, it's been so long.
You're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're just like, there I am.
Be your best. Never, ever, ever stop dreaming. I don't care what they tell you.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, find the defendant guilty.
I am proud to be Asian.
We are not drowning. We are fighting.
We cannot keep quiet about climate injustice. No action is too small.
We just have to band together as a community and get people's lives back.
Even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious.
At last, we can dare to say that we are looking at a world post-COVID. It would seem that things have mostly returned back to normal, right? I mean, we're here today, not locked up at home still. And I suppose in many respects, life has gotten back to normal, but not in every possible way. And for all the destruction and harm that COVID might have caused over the last couple of years, there is a silver lining to be had out of it, and that is that it's proved to us that we can do things differently. And hopefully we've had a chance to really think about this in the recent couple of years and apply our minds to how we can do things differently and better as we move into the future. And so it's time for us to accept and embrace that there is no going back to the old world exactly how it was in the past. Good morning, my name is Barry Shrosbree, and I'm going to be talking to you today about how we can enhance our processes through digitalization, and in doing so, talk about why it's important as well. And I'm going to touch on a couple of examples because a number of us will have digitalized already. And going beyond that, I'll also talk a little bit around what we can expect as we head into the future. But to kick us off, though, I want to share just another short clip that looks at digitalization from a fintech perspective in the emerging market space, just to kind of set the scene for the rest of my presentation. Let's take a look.
Access to financial services is vital to global development because having an account makes it easier to invest in health and education or in a business. Accounts also help families manage economic emergencies that can push them into poverty. As of 2021, 71% of adults in developing countries have an account with a financial institution or mobile money provider. This is an increase of more than 50% from a decade ago. Digital financial services, and particularly mobile money, drive inclusion. In sub-Saharan Africa, 33% of adults use a mobile money account. Access to financial services can help empower women, and technology has helped narrow the gender gap in financial inclusion. Although in developing countries, men are still 6 percentage points more likely than women to have an account. COVID-19 accelerated adoption of digital payments. 1/3 of the adults in developing countries who paid utility bills directly from an account did so for the first time after the start of COVID-19. In Latin America, for example, 40% of adults use their account to pay a merchant in store or online, including 14% of adults who made their first merchant payment from an account during the COVID-19 pandemic. There remain 1.4 billion unbanked adults worldwide. Digitalization may be our most powerful tool for building on the momentum of the past decade, helping build financial resilience for the millions who need it most.
Access to financial services and financial inclusion is one of the top issues globally today, and particularly true for South Africa as well. And by enhancing our processes through digitalization, we hope that we can start consumers on a journey toward creating generational wealth. The latest stats show us that there's an insurance gap in terms of death and disability to the tune of in excess of 37 trillion rand. And so we need to start considering how we can tackle this problem in different ways. And how we'll address this, there's two things that we can consider. On the one hand is the upside potential, that there's actually quite a significant opportunity for us to make a real difference because of how much of a gap there actually is. On the other hand, however, it paints a rather bleak picture in that we have such a level of underinsurance and undercoverage for all of our South Africans. And so not only do we have this issue that we need to address, it's a couple of things that might be contributing to this problem. There's consumer education for one, but it's also around accessibility to these kinds of solutions as well as affordability. And on top of this, to compound the problem further, there's also this financial struggle that we're all dealing with today. And so in as much as lockdowns might have lifted and things feel like they have gone back to normal, the reality is what clients are facing today is, as someone mentioned earlier, it's really a perfect storm. The impact of COVID, the current financial challenges we're facing, we're talking about fuel price rises, inflation, interest rate hikes, and the like. And so there's cost pressures are mounting, not just for the consumer, but for you as advisors as well in the everyday activities of how you go about doing your business. However, the good news is there are some creative solutions that are out there that we can apply. So it's not all a doom and gloom situation. And I'd like to just share with you a very quick COVID story that I personally find quite encouraging. You see, we brought our digital solution to financial advisors a few years ago, back in 2019. Some of you might know. The problem is that when COVID lockdowns hit, and I'm sure this is a similar experience for all of you around the room today, is we found ourselves running around. We had to organize laptops, get remote workforces going, buying up data and SIMs and the like, just to ensure there was business continuity. And we did an incredible job of this. Only problem is that this only really solved for part of the problem that we had to face at that point in time. And that is, it was more your in-office and support type functions, but it didn't solve the problem for the financial advisor who had to be out there in the field. And so this particular challenge, our Vantage 1.0, that's the name of our platform, we had a great digital solution, but the reality is with the hard lockdowns, it wasn't possible for a financial advisor to actually go out there and visit their clients face-to-face because of the restrictions. But depending on how you look at these things, with every challenge comes an opportunity. And so we reacted and incorporated with a remote acceptance solution by way of digital and OTP so that our brokers could still go out there, so to speak, and service their clients. So now the advisor could quote, they could underwrite, as well as conclude a policy with their client without needing to see them face-to-face. They could do it remotely. And at the time, you can imagine this would have been an amazing solution because they observed the socially distant protocols and the like. So it ensured business continuity for our advisors. And I can tell you firsthand, this proved to be an absolute game changer for our advisor partners. The harsh reality, though, for many of us sitting in the room here today is that we really struggled during these hard lockdowns. I mean, to say the least, it was an absolutely devastating blow for our income, our livelihoods. However, we were quite fortunate in that we saw quite the opposite. In our broker distribution channels, we actually observed some of our best growth ever. And beyond our own internal channel, IFAs that have been leveraging our technology saw some of the best growth in their spaces as well. I'm talking significant growth, 200% up compared to their pre-COVID levels. And all of this was thanks to digital enablement. Today, there's a significant proportion of South Africans that are shopping online. If you just consider yourselves as you sit here today, as a consumer, how many things you do that are digitally enabled solutions. If you think about a time when we used to go to the bank physically, now we do everything online, right? Online banking, we use our applications on our phones, we do online shopping, we use streaming services like Netflix and the like. And if you think back several years, a number of us in the room here today, you'll recall when we had to do a project at school, how did we get our research? We had to struggle along to the library, get our research there to put our presentation, so to speak, together with our project. Whereas nowadays, how do we do it? Google. We just ask Google. We've got access to information at our fingertips. And the reality is, our consumer is also changing. Their expectations is they want immediacy. They want answers now. You can't imagine going back to a world, and I cited those few examples of how it was in the past, where it's just painstakingly slow. And so we need to be cognizant of this and the changing expectations of our consumer. So the challenge then is to pivot to digital as part of the solution. And to do this as a financial planner, you need to think about the right partnerships and how they can help you transform your processes to match these evolving client expectations. And the question you should be asking yourself is, have you been digitally enabled, or are you still stuck and battling doing some of the things in the old way? One of the biggest barriers, however, to consider is the lack of digital integration into a comprehensive ecosystem. Now, when I talk about a comprehensive ecosystem, what I mean by this is not simply a case of digitizing, let's say, a manual application form by way of an editable PDF, but then in the background, all the other processes are still that long, manual, tedious thing that's happening. It doesn't really solve the problem. You maybe shave off a little bit of time up front. I'm talking about something that's a comprehensive solution that speaks to the entire value chain to make a difference. Today, SureTechs and startups, they are born digital. And so for some of the more mature organizations out there, we have to apply our minds to consider what are our digital transformation strategies as we move into the future. I've got one more clip that I want to share with you around a company that has embraced digital solutions, and they've successfully incorporated this into a complete ecosystem. Here's a mind-boggling number for you. 5 billion. That was the number of visitors IKEA online channels welcomed in a single year. The online retail sales are up, and as a consequence of all of this, their total sales revenue is made up more than a quarter through these online channels today. Now, I appreciate the IKEA example is a little bit far removed from our industry, I get that, but what it does is it shows us how the digital sales journey can enhance business growth. On the other hand, there's a multitude of examples of other companies that have failed. And we don't have to think too much about those. You've got the likes of your COVIDs, I beg your pardon, you've got the Kodaks, and you've got Musicas and so on. There's a number of examples, and I'm sure as you sit here today, you can think of many as well. Companies that have unfortunately faced the brunt of not transforming with digitalization. The second biggest barrier that we need to consider is this lack of trust or perceived complexity in our process. And so some of the term robo-advice for many of us is something that might scare us, but the reality is that this is not something to be feared. The truth of the matter is this is there to enable our process and service our clients better. There was an interesting experiment that was done with augmented chess, where they took average chess players as well as experienced or expert chess players enabled by the very same AI, and they found that the average chess players outperformed them. And the reason for this counterintuitive outcome was quite simple. It came down to, did they trust and embrace the AI? And I mentioned a few slides back some of the growth that we saw by our partners, and the reality is that came as a consequence of trusting and embracing the AI. The product business-driven models of the past, they're not going to be sustainable as we go into the future, and mainly because they can't adapt quickly enough to the changing landscape. And so it's important for us to position ourselves to be able to respond as best as possible to this changing landscape. Let's take a very quick look at what's already out there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because this is something that we're all quite familiar with, and that's the current sales process or the traditional sales process. Long story short, this is a very time-consuming thing. You'll know from the time of first interaction until the eventual issue of a policy that includes the whole process of doing your F&As, the underwriting, the physical medical examinations, and so forth. All of this eventually culminating in the issue of a policy, hopefully, mind you, but there's been weeks that have passed by in between and multiple touch points for the client. But with digital solutions like One Life Vantage today, the process looks very different. You get the same outcome, but in a fraction of the time. Firstly, you've got your F&A and your underwriting that's all built into the application of the system. And so the financial advisor is able to do everything in real time with their client, including the underwriting on the spot. It also models affordability, and this is a major issue for us today because with the lapse experience in the market, I can tell you a quick interesting stat here. In South Africa, according to ASISA, there's been 4.4 million policies written since the start of January up until June. 4.3 million have lapsed. And a lot of this will have to do with affordability. So I'm sure you'll agree with me that this is a problem that needs solutions, and creative ones at that. The entire process now can be shifted to a paperless environment, and we've chopped this right down from a process that traditionally would have taken weeks to something that you can do within a space of 35 minutes. Now I want to look at what the environment might look like in the years to come up until 2030. But before we fast forward to 2030, it's important that we take a step back and realize where we've come from with this journey. Back in 2017, these were the two key takeouts as seen as critical going into the future: simpler underwriting and digitalization. And at the time, it was around a quarter of the respondents saw this. Nowadays, we've got a view from insurers that 94% of them view these comprehensive ecosystems as critical as success for moving into the future. And so as a result of all of this, underwriting as we know today will cease to exist in its current form in years to come. It's going to reduce down to a matter of minutes or even seconds, and it will be achieved by leveraging real-time and predictive data. We're all wearing smartwatches, we spoke about that earlier, and the reality is, as we start ingesting and there's more adoption of these types of technologies, underwriters are going to be able to produce more efficient and better outcomes for our consumers. Sorry, see, I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to try and wrap this up. In terms of the financial advisor, we expect to see by 2030 some really dramatic changes. There's going to be a heavy reliance on tech-enabled solutions, and this is to complement the fact that there's going to be a need for more support, but as our actual client bases are expected to be increasing. And I can tell you it's something that we've observed in our business as well. And then if we consider from a consumer perspective, what is the landscape going to look like and who's our target audience by 2030? And it's around 2/3 of the population are going to be Gen X, Gen Z, or millennials. And why that's important for us to take stock of that is we need to understand how these consumers want to be engaged. And there's a common thread outcome in the research around what is it that these consumer groups are looking for. First of all, they are still looking for digital solutions. They want to be able to interact in a digital kind of way, but they still want that human interaction. And so while face-to-face distribution channels are expected to still dominate into the future, the one thing that's abundantly clear is that there is going to be the shift more towards these hybrid advisory type models. But with the difference being there'll be a human touch with a seamless digital experience combined. And so in conclusion, we can see that technology and digitalization is going to have a massive impact in all aspects of the insurance industry, from distribution, pricing, claims, underwriting, the works. And many insurers will have already made some large investments toward this end in digitalization and technology. And rightly so. They understand and they know that by investing in this today, there's going to be cost efficiencies, savings, and better customer experience at the end of it. And so my parting note, I see I've run over time, so my final notes here today is two things. Number one, for those of you that have embraced digital solutions, fantastic, you're ahead of the game and you're an early adopter. For those of you that have not yet, the good news is it's not too late, but I'd strongly recommend we take action. Because if we don't, there's a high risk that someone else that has started embracing this way of doing business in a digital way could eat your lunch. And on that note, that brings an end to my presentation for today. I really thank you for your time. For those of you that might be interested in talking a little bit more about these digital solutions, we didn't get to unpack a lot of detail here. Please come and join us for a cup of coffee. We've got a team of people available, ready and happy to talk to you about some of the solutions out there. Thank you.
Yeah.